that my freedom, that I don't allow anybody to restrict my freedom of movement because I'm a woman, because I'm female. And because you got sick fuck predators out here who prey on us because they know, because of the extraordinary stigma that's placed upon women, our freedom of movement and our morals, they know they can do whatever they want to us and get away with it with permission from society. And society's Sharia law, Taliban like culture and attitude towards women. You know, I'm sorry for being a female, and I'm sorry for not staying in the kitchen and for going outside. And I'm sorry that they have predators who do what they do because they got permission from people like you because of your attitude towards us and because of the way you think, by stigmatizing us, our morals, in a manner that's not done to men. And so thus they realize that because of that minute permission, they can get away with anything. But it gets a lot worse. So at one point, they call the police, and I was trying to search for something right here. They call the police, and the police showed up. And I'll never forget what the cops, there it is, what the cops say to me when they pulled up. I remember when the cops first pulled up. Before I get to what the cops say, here's what one of the fucking paramedics say. This black boy, this fucking N-word, points to my pentagram and says that this is what caused it. This is what caused it. This 5-point star that represents woman, with woman being the fifth element. Remember that film, The Fifth Element? He blamed this for what happened to me, which is fucking religious discrimination when you think about it. But it gets a lot worse. One of the cops on the scene, this Hispanic boy, Puerto Rican, says, he looks down on me, literally, and says, and figuratively as well, and he says, well, she's a girl on the stroke. I never forgot that. And that's why it's so important for us women to realize that anti-prostitution laws affect us all. Because at the end of the day, when you start codifying into law the criminalization and the criminalization of women's morals, then therein enters the stigmatization of our morals, which dehumanizes us. And anybody, and I mean anybody, could be in that situation where a cop is looking down on you and says, well, she was asking for it because she's a sex worker. Then it goes to, she was asking for it because she was out at night by herself. They wouldn't say that about a man, but they'll say, sure as hell say that about a woman. They'll say, well, she was asking for it because of what she wore. And guess what? At the time, I wasn't a sex worker. I was working at J.P. Morgan Chase as a personal banker. Think about it. When they start criminalizing one of our types of morals, then they criminalize all of us. Because when you have to face the whore virgin complex, and when you're being told that you're not virginal enough, that you can't get raped because you're not virginal enough, because you don't conform to those whore virgin, fake, pseudo standards, double standards that men impose on us, but that they themselves don't abide by. When you start having attitudes like that codified into law, it starts to affect all of us. Because at the end of the day, what they're criminalizing in effect is they're criminalizing our morals. They're criminalizing us as women. And I don't want to hear that nonsense that they go after men as well. Only men who act effeminate do they go after. So that goes to show you that there's a pattern here between, the matriarchy, feminism, and the criminalization, the legalization and stigmatization of women's morals and the criminalization of women via prostitution, of our morals via prostitution. You know, at the end of the day, most of the arrests are of women. The Johns, the Tricks, whatever you want to call them, clients, they're left free to go home. We have families to feed too, and a lot of times, you know, they got a lot of women who get out here to feed their families, but they let the Johns go home because they have families and they got reputations to protect. So do we. You know, a lot of us don't want anybody knowing what we do because of the immense stigma placed upon us, because we're deemed tawdry and dirty because of what we do. But at the end of the day, that's why I poignantly say that we need to get rid of laws like that, because laws like that affects us. Again, 90% of arrests are of women. The excuse that's given is that, well, you know, like drug dealers, you know, it all goes back to us, and, you know, we don't have families. Fact is, a lot of women get out there because they need to take care of families. And a lot of these guys, the Johns, the Tricks, whatever you want to call them, are sent home because they, a lot of the guys are sent home because it's deemed that, well, they have families, so they have reputations to protect. So in other words, because really it's because they're guys. You know, they matter, but we don't, because we're errant women who are unrespectable and we deserve to be punished for it. So I'm saying this to say, this is why we all, you know, as women need to unite. Don't let these guys divide us, break us up. We all need to unite, and that's why we need to get rid of anti-prostitution laws. Because look at it, the world all over, it's illegal. But yet, you know, guys being able to patronize us, they let offer slap on the hand, slap on the wrist. You know, it's okay for us to offer free sex. It's okay for guys to cheat on women, but, you know, who's the one who gets demonized in those situations? It's the woman who does. It's her name who gets dragged through the mud. Look at Elliot Spicer and his, the woman that he was seeing through the escort ring. You know, if you need further details on that. You know, as I always say, it's about men wanting to control our bodies for their reproductive benefit, and that's why it's so soberly important for us to unite on this issue and to stop the bickering and recognize it for what it is, because it's anti-prostitution laws. It's not an anti-sex issue. It's an anti-woman issue. That's what it's about, because the world all over, even in places that are fully cognizant and receptive of their, you know, sexual endeavors and of their sexual freedom, there's still laws against this, and they'll justify it by saying, well, we're protecting you from exploitation. We're doing this, you know, we're doing it because we want to protect you from harm, which in essence blames the victim for what happens by blaming your morals, or, you know, in other words, what you do for a living, what your occupation is, for why horrible things happen to you. You know, they'll say, well, you know, you should be giving it up for free. And again, you know, it all goes back to men trying to dominate our minds and our brains and our bodies in an effort to tell us what we should do with them for their reproductive benefit. You know, they'll tell us, well, you know, it's not cool for you to, you know, you're not really enjoying it. Who are you to tell me? None of that matters. But anyways, what I'm trying to say is that it all goes back to the fact that men are trying to control our bodies for their reproductive benefit. And it starts with anti-prostitution laws. And it's no coincidence that this occupation has banned the world all over, simply because it benefits women, and it tends to greatly affect women and effeminate, quote-unquote, effeminate active men. Even in countries that supposedly touts freedom of sex and, you know, anti-religion. It's got nothing to do with anti-religion values anyways. To an extent it does, but I mean, this law exists in Hindu countries, it exists in, you know, Islamic countries, it exists in countries where there's a freedom of religion, and that there's no one religion that dominates the other. So this is about the patriarchy here. And you know, if you don't think that you can get affected by these laws, well, think back to the fact that I was working at J.P. Morgan Chase, and my case never even went to fucking trial, simply because they assumed, because of not only my gender, but because of the color of my skin, they assumed that I was a sex worker. And they assumed that because of my morals, I was already crucified before I even got into the door. Before I was even able to, I couldn't even get it to trial. I was already crucified right then and there and treated as a criminal. and not as the victim. Thank you for listening.